It was Monday morning, and I walked into the headquarters of the company I had built from scratch. Everyone looked busy, rushing with coffee cups and files, whispering about the big meeting happening at 10. I smiled because that big meeting was mine. Or so I thought. When I reached the conference room, I found the door closed. A young intern stood outside, blocking the way. "Excuse me," I said politely. "I need to get inside." She looked me up and down, my old shoes, my plain shirt, and said coldly, "This room is reserved for executives only." For a second, I thought she was joking. But she wasn't. "I am one of them," I replied softly. She laughed. "Sure. Maybe you're the janitor or delivery guy. But this is the board meeting." Something burned inside me. I felt anger, shame, and disbelief. But instead of shouting, I just smiled. She had no idea who I was. No idea that I owned that room. And in 10 minutes, when the presentation started, everyone inside would find out exactly who I was, and so would she. You see, I didn't come from money, power, or connections. I came from a neighborhood where dreams were considered dangerous. My mother used to sew clothes for neighbors, and my father worked double shifts at a factory just to feed us. When I told people I wanted to start a company one day, they laughed. They said, "You? You can't even afford a new pair of shoes." But those words didn't break me. They built me. I started working at a small tech store, fixing broken computers. I'd spend nights teaching myself coding from free videos. I didn't have Wi-Fi. I'd sit outside cafes to catch signals and learn. When others slept, I was awake building something that didn't even exist yet. It wasn't talent that made me move forward. It was obsession. And that obsession turned into my first startup, an app that no investor believed in. But I didn't need their belief. I needed just one thing, proof. The first version of my app failed miserably. It crashed, users complained, and I almost gave up. But failure didn't scare me anymore. I was used to hearing no. I sold my old car, pawned my laptop, and even skipped meals to keep my dream alive. I coded through the night, tested during the day, and pitched to anyone who would listen. Sometimes people laughed at my ideas. Sometimes they ignored me. But then one small client, a local logistics company, took a chance on my app. Within 3 months, their operations improved by 40%. That success became my turning point. Suddenly, investors who once ignored me started calling. And that one small yes led to hundreds more. By the time I turned 29, I had built a company that managed logistics for over 200 corporations. But even then, people still judged me by my clothes, not my capability. A few months ago, our company merged with a global tech giant. They wanted to host a meeting at their headquarters, the very building I walked into that morning. It was supposed to be a partnership discussion, but in truth, it was a test. They wanted to see if the small founder could stand among the giants. I arrived early, intentionally dressed simple, the same style I'd worn during my hardest years. I wanted to see how people would treat me without the title. And I saw everything I needed to see that day, from fake smiles to dismissive stares. The receptionist didn't even offer me water. The security guard double-checked my ID. And then came that intern guarding the door of my conference room. When I finally walked in, the entire room went quiet. The executives, wearing their expensive suits, looked confused. The same intern who blocked me froze in embarrassment. And then, the CEO of the partner company stood up and said, "Everyone, this is Mr. Khalid, the founder of the company we're here to collaborate with." You could feel the air shift. Eyes widened. Chairs creaked. The intern whispered, "You're the founder?" I smiled gently. "Yes. And thank you for keeping the room exclusive." There was silence. Not out of respect, but out of shame. When the meeting began, I didn't talk about business first. I talked about respect. I said, "Too many people in this world judge others by appearance, not ability. But let me tell you something, real leadership doesn't wear labels." Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others nodded slowly. I could see the intern's eyes watering in the corner. She realized what she had done. And instead of embarrassing her, I said something she would never forget. "Next time, before you decide who belongs in the room, remember, greatness often walks in quietly." From that day forward, That young woman changed completely. She became one of our best employees. That meeting wasn't just about business. It was about breaking stereotypes. Because in the corporate world, people are too quick to value appearance over experience. But power doesn't always wear Prada. Sometimes, it wears worn-out shoes and tired eyes. The merger went through successfully. My company grew 3 times bigger. But what mattered more was what people learned that day. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're usually the ones writing the checks. When the story leaked online, it went viral. People called it the conference room moment. Thousands messaged me, saying they'd been through the same humiliation, being treated as less, just because they didn't look rich or important. I realized then that this wasn't just my story. It was the story of every hardworking person who's ever been told, "You don't belong." So, I decided to create a new policy in my company. No uniforms of hierarchy, no fancy titles on doors. Everyone works, eats, and sits as equals. Because true success doesn't need walls, it builds bridges. A year later, I revisited that same building for another partnership. This time, the same intern, now promoted to assistant manager, greeted me with a warm smile. She said, "Sir, I'll never forget that day. It changed how I see people." I told her, "Good. Because the world needs more people who see beyond." We both laughed. And as I entered the same conference room, I realized something powerful. Sometimes life puts you in humiliating situations not to break you, but to test how you'll rise. And when you rise with grace, not ego, that's when you truly win.so. If you've ever been looked down upon, ignored, or underestimated, remember this. Your worth isn't measured by your clothes, your accent, or your seat in the room. It's measured by the fire that refuses to die inside you. One day, the same people who doubted you will whisper your name with respect. And when that moment comes, don't seek revenge, seek redemption. Smile, walk past the doubt, and let your success be the only sound they hear. Because the ones who said, "You don't belong," will soon realize you were never trying to fit in. You were building the room. It was a cold Monday morning when I walked into the company I helped build from nothing. People were rushing everywhere, suits, badges, coffee cups, fake smiles. Everyone whispered about the big meeting in the main conference room. I smiled to myself, because that meeting was mine, but when I reached the glass door, something unexpected happened. A young intern stepped in front of me. She looked me up and down, my old shoes, my plain shirt, and said, "Sorry, sir. This room is for executives only." For a second, I thought she was joking, but her eyes told me she wasn't, and I replied quietly, "I'm one of them." She laughed. "Yeah, right. Maybe you're here to deliver something." Everyone around started staring, and I could feel my face burn, not with shame, but with a silent fire.